Good afternoon. First, I want to express my deep appreciation to Ms. Anjanette Young, who has shown incredible strength and grace in the face of unimaginable trauma. Her story is the reason that we're here today, not just to pass legislation, but to ensure that what happened to her never happens again to another Illinoisan. Her courage has fueled this work, and I'm honored to stand beside her. I also want to thank my colleague, Representative Kelly Cassidy, for being my steadfast partner in this fight, and the National Association of Social Workers for their unwavering advocacy and support in getting us to this point, as well as Ed Sullivan and the work of the Illinois Rifle Association for their commitment and their support in this space as well. Today, HB1611, the Anjanette Young Act, passed out of the Judiciary Criminal Committee, with members committing to continue negotiations as we move the bill to stand on second reading. This vote is a step forward, but not a finish line. I'm grateful to my colleagues for advancing this bill and for their willingness to stay at the table to ensure that we deliver a strong, balanced, and effective reform package here. At its core, this bill is about safety. Safety for families and safety for law enforcement officers who deserve clarity, consistency, and support when carrying out dangerous duties. Just as a recap, HB 1611 ensures that warrants are executed at verified addresses. It ensures that firearms are never pointed at children. It ensures that officers are equipped with body-worn cameras and have emergency medical support nearby. And it ensures that no-knock warrants are limited to the most extreme and necessary situations, not for simple drug possession. That families are not left vulnerable after forced entry, and that negative raids are transparently reported. This makes officers safer too. It reduces the chaos of uncoordinated raids, and it ensures that they are properly trained, properly supported, and not placed in unnecessary danger. I value and respect law enforcement, and I have been, and will continue to engage with them to refine this bill. We know the risk of doing nothing. In Chicago, Ms. Young suffered a grave injustice. In Louisville, Breonna Taylor was killed during a no-knock raid, and after her death, Kentucky, along with Oregon, Virginia, and Maine, joined Florida and took the steps to limit the use of no-knock warrants. Illinois must now join them in enacting reforms that balance safety, accountability, and dignity. Let me be clear. The city of Chicago should have done more to respond to what happened to Ms. Young. This bill is part of a statewide overdue response. It's part of doing what's right. Thank you to everyone who has stood up, who has spoken out, and who has stayed in this fight for safer, smarter public safety. We are not done, but today we move forward together. Next up, I'd like to call to the microphone my friend, my colleague, Kelly Cassidy, Representative Kelly Cassidy. I'm stuttering today.
Thank you, Leader. I am State Representative Kelly Cassidy of the 14th District. I've known Ms. Young for quite some time because after the wrong raid on her house, on her home, she began working with my alderwoman, Maria Haddon, on a city response to limit the use of no-knock warrants. And her patience and resilience and faith that this can be done has been tested and tested and tested and tested. And it's not uncommon for us to start reforms at the city level, see how they work, and follow through at the state level. But working with Ms. Young and Leader Buckner and others, we've really just come to the conclusion that too much time has passed, and we have to act swiftly and promptly and make sure that nobody in the state is subjected to what Ms. Young had to endure. So I am grateful to her for her resilience and sticking with this. With that, I'd like to bring Ms. Young up.
Good afternoon. My name is Anjanette Young, and I want to start by saying, giving my huge thanks to Representative Cam Buckner, Representative Kelly Cassidy, who have stood with me during this time as we both drafted and presented on today HB 1611 that move forward today with the understanding that there's still work to be done to get it passed in the entire legislation. when my home was raided in 2019, it was something that I never could have imagined. I grew up in rural Mississippi. My grandmother raised me. My grandmother was a civil rights activist. She was a leader in her community. She was a community activist. And I watched the work that she did. And when I left Mississippi, never thought that moving to Chicago would catapult me into the same work that my grandmother was doing there. And actually was excited about moving to Chicago, excited about moving on the Near West Side where I was living when the raid happened, only to be disappointed by the City of Chicago Police Department and the City of Chicago administration, the mayor and the administration at that time. And I say disappointed by them because they have not, to this day, done what I feel like is needed to give me real justice, or to use their words, to make me whole. Right? What I've learned through this process over the last 6 years is that families are harmed and the city takes no real accountability for it, but yet then they approve a large settlement amount to make it go away. And I'm standing here today to say that that's not okay. That's not the way the system should work. And yes, there was a lawsuit, and yes, there was a financial settlement for myself, but for me, that was not okay. So it's not like they could pay me money and make me go away. I was committed to making real policy change. I'm still committed to that. And even though it's been 6 years this year, I'm still committed to the process, but I say this often to the city of Chicago, we have a timing issue, right? It shouldn't take 6 years for them to stand up and put some real policy in place that prevents police from harming Black and brown communities. When I stand here and speak, and when I speak at any event that I'm invited to talk about my story, this is not just about Anjanette Young. This is so much bigger than me. And for someone who's a social worker, and my entire adult career, I've always fought for and advocated for the rights of other and the marginalized. This situation is no different. It's my personal experience, but it's also my professional responsibility to make sure that I'm fighting for others. And so when I stand before and I'm asking people to pass this policy, I'm looking at a larger systemic issue and not just a personal experience. And so I want to say that as we move forward today, I want to continue to fight the bigger fight for all Chicagoans and all individuals who live in the state of Illinois. Thank you. And next, we're going to have Latesha Newson from NSAW.
I have to run back to committee.
Good afternoon. My name is Latesha Newson. I'm the current board president of the National Association of Social Workers, Illinois chapter. And on behalf of the National Association of Social Workers, Illinois chapter, I want to thank the members of the Judiciary Criminal Committee for advancing the Anjanette Young Act on today. Today's vote is not only a legislative milestone, it is a meaningful step towards justice, safety, and accountability for all Illinois residents. Anjanette Young is not just the namesake of this bill. She is a fellow social worker, a valued board member of NASW Illinois, and she is a valued community activist. Her wrongful and traumatic experience when police raided her home based on faulty information should have never happened. And no one in this state, no professional, no parent, no child, should ever have to endure the fear and trauma she faced in her own home. As the largest association representing mental health professionals, NASW Illinois understands the events like these leave more than temporary harm. They leave lasting psychological scars, especially for young children who may witness armed officers entering their homes, see their caregivers restrained, and carry the trauma for years. These events disrupt emotional well-being, fracture trust in public systems and service, and can have long-term consequences on mental health. HB1611 seeks to prevent that trauma before it even happens. This legislation sets clear, common sense standards for how search warrants are executed. It protects officers by reducing risk in the field. It protects families by ensuring thoughtful planning, accountability, and transparency. This is not about limiting law enforcement. It's about empowering them with the right tools and protocols to do their jobs safely and effectively. It's about ensuring that what happened to Miss Anjanette Young never happens again. We are grateful to the bill's sponsors and to all legislators who supported this effort on today. By advancing this bill, you are choosing to lead with clarity, responsibility, and compassion. NASW is proud to stand with you, and we remain committed to seeing this legislation through to the final passage. Thank you. And next, we will have Ed Sullivan.
Thank you. My name is Ed Sullivan. I represent the Illinois State Rifle Association. With this legislation, we give a kind of a unique perspective on no-knock warrants. You know, we're here today because government always doesn't get it right, and we've seen countless tragedies, including the one that we're here for. The difference between Ms. Young and my members is my members are going to be armed. And so you take the fact that my members typically are law-abiding citizens, they're not going to expect the police to be knocking down their door. My members are going to have a firearm in their hand within 5 seconds. They are going to respond to a threat that they think is going to take place to their family. They're going to charge into that threat. I think we all understand that when law enforcement with firearms and homeowners with firearms interacting typically is going to end up in a tragedy. And so that's the perspective we bring to this bill, why we think that we shouldn't be having no-knock warrants. We appreciate that law enforcement has some options should there be a need for a no-knock warrant. And so we do appreciate the legislation, and so far I believe it's been well-written, and we look forward to the completion of the legislation and moving forward into law. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Anjanette, Latesha, and Dan. Ben, you got anything?
Yeah, most of it was answered in committee, but to
Did I
clarify,
call you Dan? Ed. I said Dan. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
to clarify, there are still some situations where no knock would be allowed.
Emergency situations, exigent situations, situations where people are in danger, situations where flight risk is a possibility, situations where the destroying of evidence is a possibility, right? And so this gives some discretion based on the dynamism, right, of these situations, for sure.
So is that something that a judge would sign off, or is this police are responding to what they already know based on maybe some other information?
Yeah, so
life-threatening situation.
since you got to go to a judge to get the warrant,
Okay.
this will be part of that process, right? And so saying, Mr. and Mrs. Judge, we know that this is no longer legal based on current Illinois law. This is why we need a waiver, for lack of a better term, to be able to execute this warrant in this way. These are the facts, and this is why we need to move forward.
What do you think about what Representative Tipsword asked you about the time frame on this, having to wait 30 seconds to enter, the time of day to do this? Are you considering any changes to that at all based on these conversations you're going to have in the future?
Yeah, so part of the commitment to hold this bill on second reading today is that we can continue to have robust conversations about how we move this forward, once again in a way that that avoids as many unintended consequences as possible. Representative Tipsworth and I have had some good conversations. We'll have more. I appreciate the perspective that he brings to this conversation. In fact, the folks on the other side of the aisle I spoke to immediately about this were him, Representative Sheehan, Representative Cabello, because of their chosen line of work, right, as law enforcement officers and first responders, just to hear from them the practical standpoints and the things that may need to be a part of this conversation. So I'm looking forward to continuing that conversation with them.
What's the concern with Karina's law exactly?
I've gotten a few kind of tangential concerns from some of my colleagues. They basically have said that law enforcement is still trying to wrap their brain around how they're going to enforce that to the letter of the law the right way based on resources and what they have at their disposal.
Mm-hmm.
And that they want to make sure that this is not an actual quote unquote burden, right? And so, we'll get down to some of those specifics in our further conversations.
Okay, that's all I got.
Thanks, man. Thank you.